once again, welcome this evening to Ahmedabad Management Association. As you all know, AMA is an institute of continuous learning, and any opportunity to grab, I will use the word grab, visitors, we don't let it loose. We have our very good friends like Professor Malik, who always kind of help us with identifying good visitors coming to the city, and we make sure that we latch on to this opportunity. So, good evening, all of you, once again. Welcome to AMA. It's a beautiful evening, I think, because we have two professors talking about two different things. A lot of people joining us online as well. This will be live, available on Facebook and YouTube on the Ahmedabad Management Association channel. We have two professors with me. One, of course, is going to talk about opportunities in management education. And Dr. Now, I think we look forward to your insights, because in times of changing technology, in fact, I don't know if should go on to say that, as some people have already written obituaries about universities, with artificial intelligence coming in, it will be very useful to have your insights. More importantly, if you could possibly also maybe throw a light on how industry can collaborate with academia. That is one place where I believe India and both as industry and academia and the country needs to work compared to what we see in the Western countries. So looking forward to hear from you. But of course, Dr. H.R. Unnava is Dean at UC Davis Graduate School of Management. Michael and Joel Uriston, Dean and Professor of Marketing, 2024. Poets and Quants Dean of the Year as well. His research has been published in leading journals such as Journal of Consumer Research and Journal of Marketing Research. With extensive teaching experience in marketing management, consumer behavior, and international marketing, he has been honored with multiple awards, including the Outstanding Undergraduate Teacher Award from the American Marketing Association. He had spent 32 years at the Ohio State University's Fisher College of Business, serving in key leadership roles before joining the Graduate School of Management in 2016. He is the co-founder of Angi. Former Angi's List serves on the board of Pride Industries and the Bay Area Council. But I must say that about good 5-10 minutes of conversation here and couple of revelations on how you've worked with some Indian brands or maybe loosely just helped them has already excited me to hear you. So, Professor, thank you so much. And there's a token of love that we have from AMA for you. I request you to please accept, and as I request my members of audience to clap for him. So. Friends, along with Dr. Unnava, we also have an equally accomplished professor in Professor Dr. Puneet Gupta. He has close to 3 decades of professional and academic experience in India and North America. He serves on various boards, including UTI Pension, which is, of course, we all know, $40 billion assets under management. Fusion Finance, which is again among the top 3 microfinance companies. NCDX, I mean, Gujaratis, sir, don't need to be introduced to what NCDX is, but of course, and then Meta Material, Circular Markets, Sustainability, Carbon Credits, and so on. As a part of his board roles, both as an independent director and shareholder director, he has chaired various board committees. He is also an advisor to ONGC, startup fund with over 20 portfolio companies in sustainability, alternative energy, and green technologies. Dr. Gupta serves as a professor of practice and has delivered lectures at various business schools and executive programs, including the IMT Ghaziabad, SP Jain Institute of Management, and Indian School of Business, Hyderabad. In fact, Dr. Gupta, what I just mentioned to Dr. Unnava about how industry and academia must come together, I'm very happy to say that not just you, but some universities here in Gujarat also have started having this professor of practice as a position to make sure that they value people coming from industry into the classroom. So very happy that universities are working towards it, and looking forward to hear from you as well, sir. Again, a token of love. I'm not going to between you and the professors should look like a nice MBA classroom that we have for about next 1 hour, and that is what we look forward to always. Coming back to AMAs, I mean, we always say AMA is always moving ahead, AMA. So continuous learning, and we look forward to you. So we have about, I believe, 30 minutes with Professor Unnava, and then about as many with Dr. Gupta. And then, of course, towards the end, we'll take some questions. And meanwhile, if you have presentation, we can have that. Otherwise, of course, the talk can say. But for the benefit of all, Dr. Unnava is going to talk about opportunities in management education. How can you build your career path? Case of University of California, UC Davis, and Professor Gupta is going to talk about building boards and strategic roadmap in MSME and high growth business. In fact, both the topics are very valid, as I said, with changing landscape of technology. And then Professor Gupta, I must also say that a lot of Gujarati companies are now SME listed and so on and so forth. They are required to build boards as a part of compliance, but perhaps your talk will go a long way in educating them how it can in fact not just be a matter of compliance, but possibly much more value. So looking forward to hear both of you, sirs. Professor Unnava, the stage is all yours. Thank you. Yeah, most welcome.
Thank you again very much for the introduction, and I appreciate all of you for taking the time to be here this evening. Just share a few things that we are seeing from where we are back in the United States. We can have a dialogue on, is the same thing happening over here? What are some options that we have given how the field of education is changing? One of the first things that we noticed in the last few years is that the value that is given to higher education has diminished. People are questioning whether the structure we have developed over many years in the form of a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and a PhD, is it even worthwhile to go through that structure? Or is it possible for us to not get that education at all? There are several reasons for that, but most dominant of them is the notion that the cost of education has gone up at a pace that's higher than inflation, but the returns that people have been able to obtain have not grown at the same rate. And there was a large controversy that happened in the United States where University of Southern California was blamed by a reporter from Washington, Wall Street Journal, saying that they have recruited students into their social work program who ended up paying close to $200,000 for that education and ended up getting jobs that were paying them $40,000 each. And so they questioned whether this was even a practice that should be condoned, or should there be some punishment that is meted out. Of course, a lot of discussion followed that, and so people started asking even more questions after that. But more telling was a survey that came out where the parents of students who were just entering high school were asked a simple question: what do you expect a high school to do for your child? In general, if you go back several years, ability to enter a college of choice was in the top 10 things that a high school is expected to do for students. That was always something that was coming up as one of the things they expect from a high school. In 2023, that concept of a high school should prepare my child to be able to go to college fell to number 47, which means they were not even thinking about college as an important thing for their children to go to, because they don't believe in that anymore. And added to that, we have seen that more than 50% of the high schoolers who were surveyed last year indicated that they don't plan on going to college to get their degree. They would instead get some certifications, and that should be adequate for them to be able to get jobs, is how they explained what their plans were. So we are operating in an interesting time where students are questioning the value of higher education. Companies are questioning the value that is being provided by universities. Parents are questioning that. And the government is joining all these groups and analyzing the value of education and launching job opportunities, especially in the United States, where many of the jobs do not require college education. So, institutes of higher education like ours are in a situation where the society that had given us the privilege of educating their children is now asking hard questions and telling us that we haven't been able to do our job well. So the question is, what should we do next, given these developments that are taking place? Several of the points that were mentioned by Dr. Shah are relevant to what we are talking about, because universities have become ivory towers and they have been kind of looking down on the industry as if the industry doesn't know what they do. And that dialogue happens quite often where industry leaders are criticized by the academics for not doing stuff the way it should be done. Well, that's not true all the time, because realities sometimes differ, and people have to understand how to work in conditions that are far from optimal. Because, like in medical practice, when we teach how to perform a surgery, we are probably thinking about ideal conditions. That doesn't happen very often. People come in, they have significant issues, comorbidities, and we have to figure out what to do with the patient. Same is true with management education as well. So now, as we are going through all of this stuff where the degree itself is being questioned, we are now hit with something else, which is the artificial intelligence. Now we are seeing artificial intelligence take away a lot of the work that we have been training our undergraduate students to do. So think about analytical work, simple work. If I had a question of, well, what kind of campaigns are being run in the detergent industry right now, I would ask my undergraduate employee, who just employed somebody from the undergraduate program, to go and do the work. That student will go and do all kinds of internet-based work, library work, and prepares a report and brings it to me, maybe asks for a week to make this happen. Now I just type it into ChatGPT, and 5 minutes later I got everything that I needed. So the job of that undergrad, or the kind of work that's being done by that undergrad, is not as important anymore to hire a person to do it, because as long as I know somebody who can run ChatGPT for me, I should be able to farm it out to that. Given that approach that's been taken, companies have latched on to AI very quickly. We have seen several people doing several things using AI. I normally don't want to just tell you a list of things that people have been using AI for, but excuse me, a framework that we have used. A framework that's been used, or I like to use, is something that's been discussed in the MBA programs around the world, which is a framework that Michael Porter came up with many years ago. He talked about what he says is a value chain. And the value chain is where companies can perform their work in a way that's superior to the competition on any of the elements of the value chain and derive competitive advantage. Because if you go back 35, 40 years, competitive advantage was almost always viewed as a better product. That's all people thought about. But Porter's idea was, no, there's just a whole lot of things that happen in the business. And he divided them into categories. For example, there is inbound logistics, suppliers that you find, the materials that you use to make the product, all those things are inbound logistics. Then there is operations that we perform on what we find. Then there is marketing and sales that we do. Then we have outbound logistics, that's transportation we use. And ultimately there is after sales service. These are the 5 elements of the value chain he talked about. And he said, if you start learning how to do better on any one of these things, you will have a competitive advantage. And the definition of competitive advantage there is having a superior product, but being able to sell at the same price as the competition, in which case you get market share. or having a product that's on par with the competition, but having the ability to sell at a lower price in which you get market share again. That's how he defined competitive advantage. And let's take a couple of examples to show you why that becomes an important concept and why we are looking at this value chain. Many years ago, I was talking to the heir of Estee Lauder, the cosmetics company. His name was Leonard Lauder, and he came to talk to us at Ohio State, and he was talking about several things they were doing. And I asked him a question. So you distribute cosmetics all around the world, and especially in the United States. What is it that makes people want to buy Estee Lauder more than something else? What is your competitive advantage? And he said, it's not the scent that we sell, it's not the packaging, it's not the price, but it is our statistics team at Estee Lauder that does a terrific job of forecasting how much the retailers can sell. So if I take a retailer like Macy's, they buy stuff from Estee Lauder and they sell it. If they cannot sell everything that they bought, then they have to dispose it off at a much lower price to people outside of Macy's, who will then sell it at a low price outside. That product that they could not sell is a loss for all Macy's stores. And Macy's loves to work with Estee Lauder because they give them forecasts which are much closer to reality than any other competitor, and therefore their losses due to Estee Lauder are lower than their losses with other cosmetics. So the competitive advantage here is not being derived by a superior product, it's actually being derived by having good marketing and after-sales service, which is the point that Porter was trying to make. And we can go and do this in multiple scenarios, but I wanted to make sure that you understood the point. And so in the age of AI, we are now looking at AI becoming a tool that will be used by companies to do one of two things. One is to be able to get more people to buy your product, so increase revenues. And second is to become more efficient in what you're doing, which means you lower your costs. Either way, you're increasing your margin, and that's what people are using it for. And survey after survey now has shown that people who have aggressively adopted AI went through a steep learning curve because it's not easy to understand what AI does for you. But after having gone through that, they have reported profits increasing by more than 10%. So 20% of the companies in the US have indicated through a McKinsey survey that they have actually started seeing more profits after putting AI into action. Now, how does it work? Simple example. If you have a team of people who are doing after sales service, they pick up the call when somebody says, I have a complaint to make. You know that we have shifted most of them to online chatbots, and they use them, but even they are not doing a good job before AI was what it's become today. And because of that, people start with the chat and then ask for a live operator to talk to. When using AI correctly for these things, companies have discovered that they reduce the request for talking to a live person by 50%. And that's savings that goes directly to the bottom line. And that's what we are talking about. How did it happen? Well, it happened for a simple reason. Previously, AI is not new. If you go back to the 1950s and 60s, people were still talking about how to use computers to think like humans. The Carnegie Mellon University people actually started a project called Human Associative Memory, where they were able to do a query of a computer and see if it can come back with an answer that makes sense. So AI has been looked at for a long time. How do I make a device think like me? Because if you look back at the entire history of humanity, all of the time we are trying to do only one thing, to be more comfortable than we are today, right? Everything we do is trying to be more comfortable. So AI is that ultimate holy grail where we are able to tell something to do something for us. The reason why AI didn't pick up until 2022 was because you could do BI, but you had to be an expert in BI to be able to business information, the way you manage information business, analytics. So you had to type, or SQL, you had to do SQL querying. Not everybody knew how to do SQL query. In that sense, the turning point happened when natural language models started coming up. LLMs, when they happened, you and I now can ask ChatGPT a question. straight like we ask each other, and it will interpret the question correctly and will give you an answer that will be helpful to you. That changed everything in terms of AI, because suddenly it's accessible to every human being and they can do that. And we are doing it now, where for a simple question I asked my marketing staff, well, what do you think should be our advertising plan for our programs? They said, we'll come back to you with a report. And they asked ChatGPT that question with a few data points. And they came back with a total advertising plan in like 15 minutes. I was shocked to see them do this, but I said, that's fantastic that you're using this. So we are now dealing with a changing business landscape where artificial intelligence is taking over several functions that we believed we could serve through undergrads and first-year MBAs. And then we are also seeing an appreciation for education diminishing in the society, and we have to figure out where our place is. That's where we are operating as UC Davis in United States. And the way we have approached this problem is going back to looking at AI as a tool and incorporating AI-based learning into all the courses that we teach. So take a simple thing about marketing. There is a course called AI Applications in Marketing. And people, the students who are in the classroom actually are encouraged to use ChatGPT. They will actually find the limitations of ChatGPT when they do that, because ChatGPT was trained on data until 2022. After that, people stopped putting more data into it because they realized that if you put some question and put some data into ChatGPT, it becomes accessible to everybody else because ChatGPT database is transparent. And because of that, people stopped putting data, and ChatGPT came up with an enterprise version where you can have a GPT within your organization, put all your files in there, protect it from outsiders, and ask questions of that. But when you do that, you're losing the value that you get from outside database. So this is a fight that now we'll have to see how artificial intelligence will win, because it doesn't have access to information that is classified. But we do teach them how to use the ChatGPT, and we also teach them something very simple, which is ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever the program is, they are very sensitive to the words you use in your query. So if you use the wrong word, or if you think you have asked the right question but you didn't frame it right, it gives you a very different answer. And they have to figure out what the right answer or wrong answer is and then mess with it a little bit. And the reason I mentioned that to you is because all these things that we are seeing as limitations of artificial intelligence are the opportunities for students of the future. Because if you go back 20 years, we did not have a cloud services specialist. We did not have a YouTube specialist. But now we have them because they have become tools that we are using in our marketing all the time. That's what's going to happen with the AI as well, because there are several limitations of AI. And we all know that AI cannot do certain things. It can do a lot of things very well. As I was mentioning to some folks this afternoon in another conversation, we were talking to a Hollywood producer who said that they receive about 3,000 scripts every year. And he was not able to read 3,000 scripts to decide which ones would they like to make a movie of. But now they're feeding it to ChatGPT with some instructions, and he says, I can process all 3,000 and get a very good response from ChatGPT. So there are areas where we are seeing AI being used. There are areas we are seeing AI having limitations, and that's where we are focusing, saying these are the job opportunities of the future. And you will all experience that. Now, other thing that's been shown is consistently, people at this point, because AI is still being introduced into the market, people who have used AI are outperforming people who are not using AI. There's no question, because they're deriving the advantages. But the field will get evened out, just like the internet. Previously, people who use the internet were getting more money than people who were not using internet because they had e-commerce going. Once that became more common and democratic, then it's a fight between people using internet. So artificial intelligence will get to that point where everybody is using artificial intelligence, And therefore, we had to figure out who has the better way of using artificial intelligence. It's not going to take away a job that exists, it's just going to make it more competitive in many ways. So, that's one scenario that we are playing at. This is one way by which people are going to behave with AI. And so we can teach them how to use it as a tool, embrace it as a tool, and derive advantages from that. The alternative is actually a lot more interesting and scary at the same time. Because AI, one of the fears that people have expressed for many years is that AI can take over our lives. And these are people who probably are watching Netflix every day, but they don't understand that 85% of the users of Netflix only watch what Netflix recommends. They don't go and search and find out what they should watch until somebody tells them something, which means you have already surrendered your choice to an algorithm that's telling you what to watch. So now you can extrapolate that and say, okay, if that's what happens with Netflix, is it happening with other programs as well? And the answer, at least in the United States, is yes. 35% of the people are buying products that are recommended by Amazon. 65% of the Spotify listeners are listening to music that they would not have picked themselves, but are listening to that music because Spotify picked it for them, and they're paying money to Spotify for that music. It's interesting. So 35% of the people who are using Alexa said that their morning routine has been changed by Alexa, and they're doing what Alexa is telling them to do. So we have actually surrendered our behavior to algorithms. And if that happens, we will have an interesting future where, because I know that you are not important anymore, you are only listening to the algorithm, my marketing is going to be to the algorithm. So it'll be a fight between algorithm and algorithm rather than you and I as consumers and producers. That will be a very interesting scenario in the future. I don't know where we will go with that, but it's something that we are preparing future people for. It's possible. See, the reason why that happens is because, as I said in the beginning, we are not interested in working hard, all of us. We try to farm out as much work as possible. Choice is a very difficult thing. There is an old saying that thinking is hard, it hurts. And so people don't think. And think about it this way. So when I go to UC Davis, because I came from Ohio State, I'm looking to find a dentist. How do I do that? I just turn to one of my colleagues and say, hey, do you know a good dentist? And he said, oh yeah, my dentist is a great guy. You can go to him. I go to him. I didn't think. I have no idea whom I'm going to. I have no real record of what the guy did. I'm just following what my friend told me because it's not worth thinking. Unless something terrible happens with the dentist, I'm not really thinking anymore. So people are trying to think less and less, and AI actually plays into that exact sentiment we have. That's where we have to figure out, where do we empower people and make them understand that sometimes their choices are not the right choices because an algorithm doesn't know a lot of things. So just to kind of add to that, I interviewed some companies before we did some things that we did. And one of the things, so UC Davis is kind of a different place. But most people don't know about it unless they are part of that ecosystem. UC Davis is number one in the world in food science, number one in the world in agriculture, number one in the world in winemaking, number one in the world in animal sciences, number one in the world in veterinary medicine. It's kind of one of those things that we don't think about on a daily basis, and so people don't know about UC Davis, but that's what they do. And so we decided that we will actually focus on food and alternative energy and biotech as part of our MBA program. We talked to some companies and they said, that's exactly what we want you to do. And the reason is an MBA is taught no emotion. They just use the same spreadsheet skills to analyze a problem with a chain of dry cleaning stores versus an agricultural product. But in many cases, unless you have passion for the industry that you're working for, you will not make the right decision because that empathy comes to play and you will be able to start infusing that empathy, which AI is unable to do as of today. And so we are going in directions where we think we are adding value by providing the type of an MBA student that AI cannot do, and therefore will be able to contribute to the society in many ways. But those are some of the opportunities that we are exploring right now. And one of the opportunities that we have isolated right now is kind of a combination of things, but we have discovered that the current generation is asking for certificates rather than a degree. But at the same time, if you go back and look at the people who have joined companies after getting certificates, over a 10-year period, they're slowly getting their undergrad degree by taking classes at some university or the other. So they still want that undergrad degree because companies still value that. However, it may not be something that you want to do it in 4 years continuously after your high school. So what we discovered, therefore, is that MBA is the same thing. We talk to companies and they say, we don't want our employees to go out there and get an MBA for 2 years or 2.5 years if it's part-time program because it's too much time and too much money. Instead, what we want them is to get MBA quality education, but only for limited segments of what they need. So you start out your job and then you decide that you want to become a manager. The company is willing to train you to become a manager because they see potential in you. At that point, what we have discovered is you don't need accounting and finance and operations and all those things. What you need is how to manage a team of people, how to resolve conflicts, how to negotiate, what is OB, organizational behavior, and how does it affect people's work styles. That's what you need. So we take 4 courses and we start offering them as courses in the MBA program online. But when you're done with the 4 courses, you get a certificate. It's called a Graduate Academic Unit Certificate. You take the certificate and then you kind of go off and then do other things, but then your company decides that you should probably be trained now to manage a small business unit. For that, you need accounting and finance, because when you manage a business unit, you need to understand the finances of that unit. So we actually have an accounting and finance certificate that you will come back and take it from us. Once you're done with it, you'll go back and do your work. It's possible at that point the company says, we want you to be a division manager. Then you come back after 2 more years or 3 more years and you say, I now need marketing and demand forecasting and all those things. We give you a certificate in that. So you actually take these certificates, which are different from executive education. They are full-fledged classes in the MBA program. You take these certificates and you add them up over time. When they cross the limit of 72 units, you'll come back and say, I've finished my MBA equivalent. Can I get my MBA now? The answer is yes. But if you decide not to do the MBA, you still have certificates that the companies are willing to value for you, because it's an academic certificate given by a highly ranked business program. That's where we are going in terms of career paths. The other thing we are doing is working on collaborations, which is where the NIRMA Institute starts coming into play, because the business school there and us are working together to see if we can provide pathways for students from here to be able to pursue their higher education in the United States in a collaborative manner where the cost of education is lowered significantly. If a 2-year MBA program costs $120,000, and if a student says that's too much money, I can't pay, but if they were to finish their first year at NIRMA and then come to us for the second year, they'll pay much less. That's one way by which we can actually jointly give degrees to the students, so they can have a US degree and they can have a degree from India as well. That's the kind of model that we are pursuing to be able to address the needs of students in this country who may have limited number of choices and therefore are unwilling to just go to any MBA program. This will offer them an opportunity to go to 2 high-quality programs and be able to advance their careers. So just an idea of how things are going, what we are seeing, what are the different challenges we are facing. And for the executives in the room, always, of course, these programs are all available both at NIRMA, and we have online programs as well. So there are career pathways for them as well. So that's my spiel. Just wanted to make sure that you knew where we are, what we are seeing, and how we are responding to that. strategically how we are evaluating our options and in investing in certain things that we never did before, because that's going to be the new age of education, a generation that's going to be divided in terms of what the value of education is. And we have to face that generation and give them what they're looking for, because ultimately, universities, whatever you say about them, they do have capable faculty who are able to deliver what the students need. And as Dr. Shah mentioned, there is a significant increase in industry collaboration. We have from UC Davis Graduate School of Management, working with MBAs and food scientists, just launched a product in the marketplace. There is a second product that has been funded. The first $1 million have been funded, and they're coming up with technology to decaffeinate coffee without making it acidic and without losing flavor. That's because our food scientists have figured out a new way of doing it. When it's all done and when it comes here, what it will be is a small sugar packet like thing. So you can take your Starbucks coffee and then you just drop that powder into that. 15 seconds later, it's decaffeinated. And we came up with that idea because we realized that people were not happy with the decaffeinated coffee choices they had, because they were either overly acidic or they didn't have any flavor. But then we discovered through our food scientist research that our stomach actually naturally decaffeinates coffee when we drink it. And so they figured out what the enzyme was that the stomach was using and made a version of that enzyme, and they're now using that to decaffeinate coffee. But this is all work that's being done by MBA students and food scientists to launch products into the future. That's where we will see some education happen, and there'll be more and more of those things rolling out from UC Davis. So those are my remarks. I think I will now ask for the next speaker to come on. So, sir, it'll be interesting to hear from you as well as to what are you seeing, and of course we'll be able to answer questions together. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all, and thank you, Dr. Shah, for giving me the opportunity. Thank you.
What I suggest is if we can maybe say take a couple of questions before we have Dr. Gupta come, because I presume in the posters we said that Professor Gupta starts at 7, so maybe if there were a couple of people anticipated to join in a little later, we could have it. But I don't know if we have some questions to start with, or I certainly have two. Yeah, sir. So the mic is coming so that the people joining online can benefit. Yeah.
Dr. Rao, thank you very much for such a brilliant technical talk, particularly the development of AI versus the human behavior as well as the need of the time. Mainly what you said about the programs online available for the MBA certification. What are the duration of that, such kind of courses, and what are the fee structures?
So the certificates typically have 4 courses in each certificate. And so the MBA program, as I said, is a $120,000 program. We offer that if you take the entire certificate, it's $75,000. So that's much cheaper than taking the MBA program as it is designed right now. The difference is that this certificate that we are talking about, or this program that is through stackable certificates, you can take it over a much longer period. So the load on the individual in terms of financial requirements is spread out over a much longer period of time. And because it's a graduate academic unit certificate, you actually get a transcript that you got this grade. You actually develop friendships amongst the people because you take 4 courses with them. And so there's a whole bunch of things that will happen which don't happen in just executive education kind of an environment. That's why we did it the way we did it. Yes, sure.
Do we have any other questions? All right. Professor, now my question is, where do you see the experience side of it? I mean, 2 years in one campus, hostels, hostel rooms, the kind of friendships. I mean, some of the largest companies we have seen, they were started in hostel rooms or dormitories, as we know. Do you see that the social side of the classroom, you know, if as they now spread out, you know, I'm not sure if people do 2-month-long certification courses, are they going to forge such strong friendships as they would have while staying for, say, 2 years in the same dormitory, and so on and so forth?
It's a great question. In fact, most of the time, the opposition to online has been based on the idea that we may not form the same cohort bonds that we form in full-time programs or in-person programs. But research shows actually that if you look at the alumni from the online programs, they are a lot more attached to the university than people who are actually doing the in-person programs.
Wow.
And the reason is they miss the university.
Okay.
And they, of course, in our online MBA program, they do come to the university at least 4 times
Okay.
to take classes. The second thing we have observed, which is something that we were not as aware of, is that there is a whole generation of people who are actually equally comfortable, whether it's online or in person.
Correct.
And their preferred mode might change depending on what it is that they are doing right now. So the first time we did our online MBA program, we had a couple of cohorts that went through the first 2 quarters. And then we had something called a residential, where they came to the UC Davis GSM campus, our campus, to attend a 2.5-day, 2-unit curriculum that we had put for them. So we thought we will actually have icebreaker for them. And this is what actually happened. We had the front desk, and they were giving out their name cards and everything. And they would come in and they would say, "Oh, you," and they would hug each other, and they would, they would talk to each other saying, "What happened to your son? You were talking about this the other day." They had formed bonds which we did not expect.
Wow.
And it was all happening online. And wherever they were having an opportunity to meet in person, they were meeting outside of classes in person and having a good time.
Wonderful.
So that's the thing, that is a generation that's different from what we have seen in ourselves. So there was some trepidation in the faculty that we will miss out on those aspects, but looks like it's not as much of a problem as we thought it would be.
Wonderful.
Right.
Brilliant. Yeah. Sure, sure.
You know,
Yeah, it's working.
following in the footsteps of sort of the insights that you just shared, imagine a classroom where I put on my AR, VR goggles, and just because I like Batman, I'm going to be Batman in this class. I'm going to wear my Batman avatar and go to class. And I'll take my favorite khakra, digital khakra, to eat in the class. And all this while I'm sitting in the luxury of my house, getting a great quality education at probably 1/10 the cost, at 10x the convenience, and potentially the flexibility of choosing what I really want to do. Because one of the biggest challenges of education, in the way I see it, in having experienced it, is it's so rigid in what it offers. When you want to be a finance guy, you got to take corporate finance, you got to take this and you got to take that. Well, I don't want to take all that stuff. I already studied that. I want to do something entirely different. I want to be a quant person. I want to, maybe do trading. Maybe, for all the Gujaratis in the room, maybe do commodities. I don't know, maybe do options trading. The point being, do you envision that being real? And is that a 2-year, 3-year roadmap, or is that probably a decade? Love to hear your thoughts.
As with everything, we have discovered that there are market segments. There are people who like it that way, and we actually experimented with that in 2016. When we had Indian students who were also admitted, we have an admitted students day where we would take them through a bunch of things. But we felt that the Indian, Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese students didn't have the luxury of attending that because it's just a half-a-day program. But we did everything in augmented reality, and we sent them the necessary toolkits. And they enjoyed it. But at the same time, it didn't go as far as we thought it would. So when we did the online MBA program, everybody told us that it'll cannibalize the part-time MBA program. And we modeled several stages of cannibalization. But then one of the things that we were talking about, it is the proposal that we wrote was that there is a group of students who would like to get an MBA but are unable to do that because they cannot be at a certain location repeatedly at certain times for 2.5 years. Their jobs will take them away someplace. They have family issues coming up. If they are accountants, they have a very rough time, January through March, over there in tax time. So there are several of these reasons why they cannot do that. And we propose saying that that segment of the market is not being served right now, and our online MBA will serve that segment. Well, it turns out that when we started doing that and we interviewed people asking, why do you want to do it online? I cannot do it any other way. If you don't have online, I would not even do an MBA. Okay. It's a completely different segment. So that's what we are now looking at, that you are 100% right in terms of technology, because right now it's Zoom, it's two-dimensional, but the day is not far off when it could be a holographic image. And so you are part of the class, and we would be able to have an interaction just like we are having now. When that happens, there's no difference between in-person and images that we are talking to.
And Professor, I just have this one question. Ahmedabad Management Association was founded by Dr. Vikram Sarabhai, is considered the father of space science. And he had this whole theory of leapfrogging. So while the Western countries was busy putting the cables, we had the luxury of having satellites straight away, and we had to not go through this entire journey of laying the cable. So by the time the whole country had telephones, the landline telephones, we already had mobile phones. So we were able to leapfrog. So do you see that this technology that Professor Gupta also mentioned, will allow India to penetrate education to the lowest possible denominator of the society at a fraction of a cost, without having fancy buildings, large campuses, unique classrooms? We just give them a VR set in one remote corner of, and do you see that happening in Africa, in countries like India, large populations, long distances, land is limited, overpopulation? What do you think is technology is an opportunity for Indian classrooms?
100% possibility is there. The issue that we are now looking at is, if education was just to get educated, we can scale it very rapidly. But if people are asking, why do I need to do that? What will I get from that? Then you need a lot of personalized services.
The value.
That's where I think scaling becomes difficult, and we have to figure out a way to scale that. Correct. If companies come together and they say, well, we'll make it happen, we'll make it happen. Because Google, I don't know how many of you have seen that happen, but Google launched a series of certificates. They said after high school, you don't need a degree. Just take this certificate, and there is a very high probability that we will get you a job in Google. If Google had only done that, it would not have worked very well. But they went and spoke to 150 different companies, and those people said they will accept the people who have gotten a Google certificate. Now you have a market that you can work with.
Great.
So that's where I think we have to really start paying attention in an era when many of the jobs that we understand are being replaced by AI. Right? There is a LinkedIn article that says it was very looking forward quite well, because in 2018 they predicted that in 2030 85% of the jobs that are created at that time don't exist today.
Okay.
That's what they were saying, because it just completely changes the way we do business. And so that's what we have to be prepared for. That's what we have to scale up to. And so we will have that advantage if we have the discipline.
Wonderful. So I think the collaboration and a lot of people, a lot of stakeholders will have to, the industry, the government, and the academia will have to come together to be able to do it. Wonderful. So I think it was an absolute treat to possibly have a sneak peek into the future of education and management. Education. So wonderful. Dr. Gupta, over to you. I think we look forward to hearing from you about what can we do inside the boardrooms to make them effective. In fact, long back I asked, what do chairmen like? And they said like-minded people. And I said, what do they mean? They said, all the people who like the chairman mind, the like-minded people. So I think you have a better perspective on that. So looking forward to this.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Typically, I love doing this in a more interactive way, but I guess I'd have to restrict myself here because of the online, right? Okay. Wonderful. First of all, Kim Cho Ahmedabad. Majama. It's an honor and privilege to be speaking at an institution that was founded by Dr. Sarabhai. And of course, Gujarat has given so much to the world with the most recent Modi ji. The transformational leadership, I think I would be remiss if I don't mention him, because I think he's an icon in terms of what leadership is about for this country and what he's done. And in fact, on my way from the airport, the gentleman who was driving me and one of the professors from Nirma was talking about how his vision built the ring road that reduced the traffic, how his vision built a canal that created water much in advance, literally thinking about the problems that will come in the future. And I think that's such a good segue into the board building process or the strategic roadmap. And I think probably we'll say at the end, so I'll try to cover three things in the time we have. One is to talk more informally about boards. And I'm going to start with a joke that an entrepreneur told me. He says, building boards, oh my God, it's like, having in-laws. Sun lo par karo apne man ki. So, I think there is that perception about boards, which was Dr. Shah fondly shared, that it's an enigma to most people, and most of the boards tend to be thought of more as a statutory compliance effort. कि बोर्ड बनाना है क्योंकि सरकार ने कहा है बनाना है, क्योंकि रेगुलेटर कह रहा है ऐसे करना है. And I think that is a missed opportunity in my humble opinion, especially for people, some of you folks here who are running interesting MSME businesses or who are running ultra high growth or semi high growth businesses, because you may not necessarily have a requirement to build a board, but you could build a board that could help propel the business in so many different directions that perhaps has not been considered. So, I'm an industry guy. I mean, academics to me was an accident. The gentleman who played a pivotal role is sitting right there, Dr. Devashish Malik, who's now running Nirma University's MBA business vertical. I had the opportunity to address what was called OMP, Owner Management Program, candidates at SP Jain about almost 15 years back, I think, maybe a little bit, I'm aging, so I'm not sure exactly when. I think 2008, 2009, somewhere around that time frame. And so I asked them a question, said, what is the single biggest issue that you guys have? Can anybody in the room guess what is unanimously the single biggest issue? And this constituted about 40 to 50 people who were running a business from anywhere from 100 crores all the way up to 4,000 crores. And they were the founder owners of those businesses. What was the single biggest issue that stopped them from growing at a rapid clip, that stopped them from being, extraordinary businesses? Didn't necessarily stop them, but, kind of didn't give them the catalyst or the acceleration that they would have liked. Can anybody in the room guess? Wonderful, sir. What's your name? Yeah, Mr. Shah, Mr. Deepak Shah hit it on the very first attempt. I was surprised. It was a surprise for me. I would have thought people are going to say revenue, people are going to say profitability, but they unanimously said it's people. And it was a fascinating revelation because, quite honestly, at that stage in my life, I had not thought of that as the number one problem statement. Partly because, I did not have that many leadership experiences at that time. And partly because, being a finance professional, most of the folks say, most of us are more cut and dry and less people centric. So at any rate, that is what, at the heart of it, is what we're going to talk about, the board building process. So, when we look at businesses, you have businesses from 0 to 1, you have businesses from 1 to 10. There are different growth stages of a business: 0 to 1, 1 to 10, 10 to 100, 100 to 1000, and so on and so forth. And I'm sure all of you know, problems, opportunities, the way you behave as a leader change based on the stage of the business you're in, right? The common joke is, what makes you successful in 0 to 1 makes you fail in 100 to 1000. And it is so true, right? Because 0 to 1, you're expected to be a jack of all trades. You're expected to go do everything in the business. 100 to 1000, your board tells you, why are you not outsourcing enough? Why are you not institutionalizing the business? अरे भाई तुम ही कर लोगे तो दूसरे लोग किस लिए रखे हैं? Right? And so I think I'm trying to lay the groundwork for why do you need boards, or what is the essence of good board in an MSME and a high growth business. So number one, everybody can relate to the people challenge. Hiring people is extraordinarily difficult. And it is much more difficult in early stage businesses than it is in later stage businesses. Easier to evaluate, you have money to pay them, easier to retain talent. This is one of the reasons we talk about brain drain. We have Sundar Pichai and a variety of other folks running the largest tech businesses or other businesses in the US, but they may not be folks that perhaps an early stage business can retain, right? And the second part of it is the problem statement and the complexity of the problem statement being different at different stages, right? And arguably, it is far more complex as an entrepreneur, as a founder. I'm sure all of you can relate, from 0 to 1 and 1 to 10. उसके बाद तो फिर भी आसान हो जाता है. Most founders will tell you every incremental dollar in a business is easier to generate, right? It's the first dollar that's the hardest, and then the next dollar gets a little bit easier, and so on and so forth, right? So when I talk to a lot of the folks that I worked with, a lot of the boards that I've been a part of, especially on the early stage side or high growth business side, one of the things that smart people love to do is use boards as an extended workforce. They are not folks that are going to tell you, आप अपने RBI की compliance की कि नहीं, आपने SEBI के norms meet करे कि नहीं, ये process क्या है, committees बनी है कि नहीं, right? That is all fine. That is statutory compliance driven board work, and that goes on, and all of us do that. But there is a certain element of board building within your world, within family managed businesses, within high growth businesses, that can give you the ability to tap into exceptional resources that you may not necessarily have access to otherwise, right? And that is the heart of building boards for such businesses. Yeah? And I think the way I have seen this is, when you think of a small business or a medium-sized business, generally, if I told you, quite naturally, all of us will want to ask, if you're going to constitute a board, okay, the first step is, what do you need? What in this business do you need to be successful? And, in fact, just this morning on the way here, I'm trying to work with a startup entrepreneur who used to be a former employee of mine. And, he's building an agentic AI platform for human resources. And so, I told him, send me 3 top things that are keeping you awake. And, he tells me, sir, funding and sales. So I said, okay, that's great, but can you think of the next level, right? What in sales is stopping you? Is it your ability to get into the door? Is it your ability to knock on many doors? Or once you get in the door, your ability to convert a sale? Or once you get the sale for 10 rupees to make it 100 rupees, 1000 rupees, 10,000 rupees, whatever. Or your ability to deliver in a meaningful way. So that aspect of what you need, what makes your business successful, if you can think strategically through it, you can find people who have mastered that aspect. So, for example, Dr. Shah was generously telling us about his cashew business on our little side conversation there. And you know, I'm just trying to role play, because what we would do typically is you would ask somebody to come up with what their business is. And so, you know, if you think about a cashew business, and it was somebody like him who's a prolific entrepreneur, in addition to being a doctorate, he talked about how he has not restricted himself to selling cashews for retail consumption. He has gone and built channels of distribution. Goa mein feni banti hai, right? Haldiram mein kaju ki barfi milti hai, and so on and so forth. And so he has opened up variety of different channels. Now, for example, if we take this business, are there core competencies within the cashew side that he could streamline and open new lines of business? Can he go to different geographies? What exactly can take him from being, let's say, 100 crore business to being 1,000 crore business in 1 to 3 years? What is stopping him? What is the issue that stops him from growing this business exponentially? Of course, it's people, that we know. But now can we get to specific aspects of what those people would do for you? And I think that is a good starting point for thinking about building boards, is being able to articulate your problem set, is being able to articulate your challenges to a great degree of detail, and then finding people who can come and help you with those challenges, because they have already solved those challenges in their past lives. And when I say past lives, I mean past businesses, right? Whereas this could take a whole new karmic connotation, but that's not what I mean. So, point being, the first step is, as they say, you know, be careful what you ask for, you may just get it. And I think the importance of knowing what you need in terms of building a scalable business is very important. And you'd be surprised, 90% of the people don't know that. Because होता क्या है, जब हम छोटा business होते हैं ना, we are so focused on operational challenges, on firefighting. How many times have you just taken a day off to say, what's next? It does not happen. It's very difficult. And there is nobody there to tell you कि ऐसा करो. और अगर आपका बच्चा MBA करके आता है और कहता है डैडी या मम्मी ऐसा करो, तो आप कहते हो तेरा दिमाग खराब है, तुझे कुछ नहीं पता. तुझे धंधे की समझ क्या है? Right? And so being able to articulate that pain point is step one. And then step two is being able to identify the right people who can help you address that pain point. You know, so this is the second part about identifying people. Now, this is the difficult part. And you know, it's very hard to say, इसमें recipe क्या है? अब मुझे भी नहीं पता. But I can tell you some of the things that have worked for me. Okay. So पहली चीज़ तो ये है कि you know, board member या co-founder रखना शादी करने के बराबर है. वो you know, मैं जब US के कनाडा में रहता था, तो वो फॉर्म में लिखा होता married, separated, divorced. एक जगह लिखा होता common law. So the first time I saw it, I said, ये common law क्या है? So common law means कि ना तो आपकी शादी हुई है, ना आपका कोई संबंध है, पर आप साथ रह रहे हो. Is that correct, sir? So this is exactly what a co-founder or a early stage founder's advisor is. Common law. They're going to tell you all sorts of things. जैसे बीवी बोलती है, हाँ भाई स्वेटर पहन के जाओ. My wife told me this morning, अरे भाई ठंड लग जाएगी, स्वेटर पहन के जाओ. मैंने कहा ठीक है भाई, मैं बच्चा नहीं हूँ. So you've got to learn to have the fine art of figuring out who is going to be your right advisor, and then what aspects of their advice you will listen to and what aspects you would ignore. Because contrary, I mean, to common opinion, even the best people are not going to always give you the best advice. So there is that aspect of your own judgment that has to play a big role, right? So in terms of selecting people, you need to have somebody who's okay with you not listening to them on and off, who's okay and has the maturity and the flexibility to understand that you are going to make some mistakes. Even if they think that they are right and they are the best thing that happened to mankind after sliced bread, it's okay to accept something wrong. Accepting imperfection is itself a skill set that is really hard to find. So therefore, first thing, at least what I look for, if I was building a family business, and I do come from a family business background, or a startup, and I have done a startup and I've failed more than I've succeeded, is being able to get around people who not only know their subject, but have the flexibility to give you room to make mistakes, have the flexibility to look at you as, you know, you are in their tutelage and you are going to do stupid things also, along with wise things, right? So that's number one. And I think the second part is, all of you can relate to this DNA match. हमारे यहाँ क्या होता था कि जब हम इन्वेस्टमेंट्स किया करते थे, so we would take the founder out for dinner, and you know, we would maybe have a glass of drink, a wine or something, and you know, the discussion would extend for 3 hours, 4 hours, sometimes even more. And the whole purpose of that was, do I like this person? And the other person also has to make the same assessment. Unfortunately, we are all humans. We do have likes and dislikes. We can't run away from that, right? How am I going to be in business with somebody who I can't stand, or who I just feel like, yeah, I don't want to be around, right? So that's the second part, you know, that is critical. The third, and in my opinion, the most important part, is integrity. And this is really hard to judge, right? Advice is good, but you need somebody who has a stellar integrity, has an inbuilt radar of accountability, transparency. ये जो बड़ी बड़े शब्द हम बात करते हैं, ये दिखते हैं लोगों में. जब आप उनके साथ 6 महीने साल भर काम कर लोगे, तो you would get to know, you know. I worked in financial services and the joke used to be, सबको पता है कौन कितना चोर है और कौन कितना ईमानदार है, right? So that's why you need to be able to make sure that you are working with somebody of the highest integrity. And that, you know, I want to share an anecdotal thing. I can't name the company, but one of the guys we were investing in, they used to do testing. And they told us कि गवर्नमेंट का धंधा करना होता है, तो अब प्राइस पॉइंट तो हमारे मैच नहीं होते. यू नो, वी कांट मैच द प्राइस पॉइंट्स because the tender is coming at a very low cost. So clearly we can't do actual testing for everything, if you know what I mean. So, you know, it's sample based testing under the guise of actual testing. So maybe out of the 100, we test for 60. It's a very large sample, but we don't test for the entire 100 because it's cost management. Because otherwise we just can't work. And that's exactly what our competitors are doing. Now, is that good integrity, bad integrity? I leave it up to you. But my point is that you need to have somebody advising you who is not going to promote that as a business, who's not going to promote that ideology as a business, or as a way of doing business rather, right? Because a lot of us tend to turn corners when business happens. I don't know, even just this morning I was talking to somebody, I just forget किससे बात हो रही थी. They were saying कि हम इनके लिए काम करते थे और उन्होंने कह दिया कि भाई we are just going to be above board Business आए तो अच्छा है, ना आए तो अच्छा है. Trust me, in the long term, that can take you places. So being able to attract individuals from a board perspective who are going to be of the highest integrity, who are going to be transparent and accountable, not to you alone, but to themselves, most importantly, is a very, very defining feature in my mind. So I think that's sort of a high level. I mean, there's so many other characteristics that you need to look for, but that's sort of a high level overview in terms of building boards. The few key areas that some of us don't realize we need. One is HR, human resources. Hiring people is very, very complex, and we tend to make mistakes because we have biases. जो अभी मैंने बोला ना कि डीएनए मैच होना चाहिए, कई बार वो डीएनए कुछ ज़्यादा ही मैच हो जाता है और स्किल साइड लाइन पे चला जाता है. So you need additional folks to be able to guide you in that process. In fact, incidentally, I happened to bump into my own dean of my business school, Northwestern, a couple of weeks back, and is a illustrious gentleman, very humble human being, just overall phenomenal human being, Dr. Deepak Jain. And I asked him कि सर आप मैं जैसे I struggle sometimes when we hire CEOs, are we doing a good job, I hope we're not making a mistake. And he told me, Puneet, it's never hurts to take second opinion. Go to people, have them meet the person for half an hour, and they may come up with a point of view that you just did not see or you just did not appreciate. One of my friends runs a fairly large venture capital fund, and he has structured his investment committee to have somebody who is a 20-year human resources veteran. And every founder has to interview with him. And he's the only one who has the veto on the investment committee. So what I'm trying to say to you is that one of the areas which we don't tend to realize naturally unless we make a lot of mistakes is the people side. And so getting folks involved on your board, even if it's not a formal board, even if it's just to have somebody who you trust, who you think can do a good job in judging people, just meet the people you're going to hire, because that's an important hire for you. That's a game changer for you. You're hiring a CEO who's going to run your business, and maybe you've met them, maybe some other members of your family have met them, but then getting external input can be paramount. So that's one area I think that's very critical. The second area is what in the parlance of management is called institutionalizing your business. हमें जब हम बोर्ड पे होते हैं, स्टैट्यूटरी बोर्ड पे बड़ी कंपनियों के, सो दे टेल अस अगर कहीं आग लगी है तो स्टॉप योर अर्ज कि वो आग जाके बुझानी है, राइट? यू आर सिटिंग देयर टू सी कि प्रोसेस है कि नहीं कि आग बुझ जाएगी. It is very hard to do that sometimes, especially if you've been a CEO, your first thing is to go douse the fire because आग लगी है, आग बुझाओ, अभी ये process बाद में देखेंगे, right? But that's not a good thing, especially when you're trying to institutionalize the business. Again, it goes to allowing your team to make mistakes and so forth. But point is, you should have individuals who can help you think through letting go in favor of process, because entrepreneurs by nature do not like process. उन्हें सब अपने आप करना है, right? And the greatest entrepreneurs continue to tell you again and again that process is a bad thing, right? So I mean, there's many successful examples, Elon Musk being one of them. Probably the richest gentleman on the planet will tell you process is crap, and he's taking that to the US government now and saying it's the highest form of inefficiency. So at any rate, that's an interesting area where we don't tend to see it as entrepreneurs because it's a weakness of ours. And so having somebody who can help us with that institutional building process in terms of process, design, and laying out the process and helping us implement the process could be very beneficial. And again, somebody who's been there, done that. The last area, probably is, again, based on your background, has to do with operations. In most high growth businesses, जो हमने देखा है, business भी आ जाता है, पैसा भी आ जाता है, but then you fail because somewhere you didn't do a good job in delivery. Somewhere you were not operationally set up for that sort of scale. Somewhere you didn't think enough about scale आएगा तो क्या होगा, क्या problems आती हैं. आज आप 100 कस्टमर सर्व कर रहे हो, कल आप 1 लाख कस्टमर सर्व कर रहे हो. बिग डिफरेंस in how your organization is geared to support that sort of growth. So I think those sorts of things, somebody who's sort of gone through that journey, has experienced that ride, can be beneficial. Again, there's a lot of other different areas, but those are personally my top 3. Third one's debatable, because there are some businesses that may not have a lot of operational intensity, right? Because the operational intensity is covered by technology. Spotify as an example, right? Or Netflix as an example. So it depends on the type of business you're in. But there you have to think about technology scaling and how your technology architecture is, and does it, So maybe operational is not the right word. Maybe it's more, is your organization geared for exponential scale? And that's a good problem to have. Not everybody has that problem, but it's a good problem to have. So that's sort of the building board side. Now, I don't know how many people in the room and audience online are really interested in strategic roadmap development. So I'll keep that brief, and then love to talk spend more time on the AI side. I think that's the buzz of the day, and more interesting. And I'd love to build on what some of the things Dr. Rao talked about. So on the strategic roadmap side, I think, as an early stage entrepreneur, we tend to not value, some of them value quite a bit, but some of them don't, about the mission and vision of the organization. And I think it's very important to be able to articulate कि आपको करना क्या है, and be able to build a culture that supports that mission and vision. And that's the first step in building that strategic roadmap. And to give you a very simple example, I worked in the United States / Canada in the early part of my career, and I worked with a company called Crystal Decisions. And the gentleman there, who's the founder, Greg Kerfoot, he used to have this philosophy that office ka darwaza hamesha khulla hai, and there is no meeting required to meet him. And this was about $100 million business, which we eventually sold and scaled to $1 billion. And the mission and vision of the business was extraordinarily clearly defined. Everybody knew what we were going to do. And the culture was extraordinarily clear. It's okay to question command. It's okay to walk in with a problem. You don't have to schedule a meeting. That may not work for every business. I'm not saying that that's the right recipe for everybody. So therefore, thinking through what kind of culture you're going to set, what kind of, mission, vision you're going to have. These seem like soft things. आप मुझसे 20 साल पहले पूछते तो मैं भी कहता यार पता नहीं क्या है ये सब, किसने देखा है. But what I have seen over the years is these can be very powerful. And there's a very interesting book that some of you may have read, Good to Great. There is a gentleman who actually did database study and looked at which are the companies that have scaled, have become successful, and why. And his deep insight is culture. The ethos of the organization is what helped people do things. See, for some of the family businesses, the way I can help you think through it is, you always have that one person who's your confidant, or two people who are your confidants, who will do anything for you, right? You can trust them to take a cash payment of a large amount. You can trust them to solve an immediate problem in your absence. You can take that 2-week vacation to wherever because this person exists, right? And if you really went and analyzed this person, why they are so attached to you, or why they are such a confidant of yours, what you will find is they are married into your ethos, your value system, your mission, your vision. You may not have proactively done that, but that is exactly the result of that output. Now imagine if you have a larger set of folks working with you who are like this person, right? So that is probably the best way I can, relate to as a medium-sized business to that mission and vision. I think the second part of it, from a strategy perspective, goes to जो आप product बना रहे हो, whatever you're making, is there a competitive differentiation there? Because what we find on and on and on is people are doing the same thing again and again and again. And one of the things that I keep, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to offend anybody, and I was in the same boat as an entrepreneur, but hota kya hai, when we get into an area, we become a Me Too player. We build a 10 crore, 20 crore, 50 crore ka business with 10-20% EBITDA margin. And then we realize अब इससे बड़ा करना मुश्किल है, तो उसके बाद हम दूसरी लाइन ऑफ बिजनेस ढूंढते हैं, फिर तीसरी लाइन ऑफ बिजनेस ढूंढते हैं, एंड देन इवेंचुअली वी बिकम अ 100 crore entrepreneur with 3 lines of business at 33 crores each, growing at 20% EBITDA. The businesses may or may not have anything to do with each other. But what we never think about is, how do I become the number one in this segment of mine? How do I gain supremacy in this segment? What can I do to my product, to my offering, to my services, to my employees to become number one in this segment? I think that people who have asked themselves that question have really gone far. I can tell you, I could not ask myself that question when I was an entrepreneur. It is a big miss for me, because the lure of cash flow is so high that it is very difficult to do things that cannibalize your product, or to do things that, यहाँ पे लग रहा है कि ये 20 करोड़ का धंधा आ रहा है, अभी यही ले लेता हूँ पहले. Why do the heavy lifting of how do I become the category leader and all this nonsense, So I think those aspects of being able to figure out your competitive advantage and not run away from finding ways to attain leadership in whatever it is that you're doing, be it making wooden, and it could be a commodity product. It is not necessarily always about the product. The competitive differentiation doesn't necessarily have to come from product. We know about Dell. It reinvented computers by doing zero working capital as a business model. Computer mein to kuch nahi badla, right? And so there are so many different businesses out there. There are lots of interesting ways to, in India especially, where you can aggregate fragmented markets. है ना? मैं, when we talk about Uber, I talk to a lot of people about Uber के आने से पहले हमारे देश में कोई भी ऐसी कंपनी थी जिसके पास 1% मार्केट शेयर भी था टैक्सीज में. आई लिव इन दिल्ली. मेरे टाइम पे तो वो सरदार जी को फ़ोन करना पड़ता था अगर एयरपोर्ट जाना है सुबह 8 बजे, तो या तो अपना ड्राइवर होना चाहिए, नहीं तो सरदार जी बंदा भेजते थे. अब वो 6 बजे निकलना होता था एयरपोर्ट के लिए. सर्दी के दिनों में 5 बजे फ़ोन कर रहे थे, हाजी प्राजी कितने, या तो वो फ़ोन ही नहीं उठाता था, तो आपको लगता था आज तो हो गई फ्लाइट मिस. मतलब कार्डियक एक्सरसाइज हो जाती थी 30 मिनट की. अब मैं सीरियसली बोल रहा हूँ, दीज आर ऑल रियल लाइफ एक्सपीरियंसेस, राइट? द क्वालिटी ऑफ सर्विस वॉज पैथेटिक. और वो गाड़ी आती भी थी तो समटाइम्स इट वाज स्टिंकिंग, समटाइम्स उसमें और कोई प्रॉब्लम होती थी. कई बार वो आधे रास्ते जाके रुक जाती थी, जी पेट्रोल ही नहीं भराया, और यार. सो यू टेक सच मार्केट्स. इंडिया में ऐसी इतनी मार्केट्स हैं जो डीपली फ्रेगमेंटेड हैं. क्वालिटी ऑफ सर्विस इज रियली पुअर, राइट? एंड there is an opportunity, immense opportunity, to build a platform that can serve that market. So you could take things where people are doing an average job and make them better, dramatically better. Anyways, so that is sort of the second part. The last part, I think, is what, at least what we have found, is people don't think enough about ecosystem. So especially what we are finding more and more is, and I want to, we do a lot more financial services or technology businesses, but आज की डेट में अगर आपको सॉफ्टवेयर प्रोग्राम लिखना है ना, तो किसी ने लिखा हुआ ऑलरेडी वो. और नहीं लिखा हुआ तो चैट जीपीटी लिख देगी 80%. So therefore, the most of what you're doing in a lot of ways is already being done by somebody else. So the question is, can you stitch together an ecosystem whereby you can find what is it that you will deliver that will add value and get everything else from others. And getting that ecosystem in place can be a huge source of, it ties into the second point, not only competitive advantage, but scale. And what we find again and again, and I'll give you a simple example. I started a company that failed, that was attempting to do give credit, loan at the bottom of the pyramid. 2016 में start की थी हमने. And so with my humble desire to see कि भाई हर किसान को, हर गरीब आदमी को credit मिले, we started this company. And so 1 year into this, my CTO came to me and said, ये हम KYC वगैरह खुद क्यों कर रहे हैं, ये बाहर वाले लोग करते. मैंने कहा नहीं यार, ये तो हमारी कोर कॉम्पिटेंसी है, हम ही करेंगे. एंड वो KYC करते करते ही हम शहीद हो गए. अगर वो बाहर से कर लेते तो हम उस पर फोकस करते जो हमारी कोर कॉम्पिटेंसी थी. राइट, आई एम टेलिंग यू, these are stupid things that I have personally done, and I'm just sharing with you that if we can let go of our ego, we can look at the business objectively, we can say these are 5 things that I can easily get somebody else to do it for. And the second part is economics. वो उसने हमें कहा 50 पैसे लगेंगे एक KYC. मैंने ये तो बहुत ज़्यादा है, हम अपना करेंगे तो 30 पैसे में आएगा. अरे भाई, अपना करते करते तो शहीद हो जाएंगे, उसका क्या. So point is, you have to look at the economics more objectively when you think about ecosystem building, because that can sometimes cloud your decision making. And therefore, being able to get the best pieces from everywhere and stitch them together, kind of like building a platform for an aggregated or a fragmented market, can be a game changer. So any business you do from a strategy perspective, you really need to think through how to build that ecosystem, right? So again, there could be various other aspects, but these are at a very high level 3. वो McKinsey में ट्रेनिंग दी जाती है हर चीज़ 3 से ज़्यादा की रिटेंशन नहीं होती. तो इसीलिए people like me, having been a strategy consultant, मैं 3 चीज़ों पे ही करता हूँ. So now we come to the more interesting part, maybe less boring, is the AI. हर कोई बात कर रहा है, AI आ रही है. वो अभी the other day I went in an Uber, तो मैं फ़ोन पे बात कर रहा था किसी से AI से, तो ऊबर वाला मुझे टर्न करके कहता, सर आपको लगता है कि हम सब की नौकरी चली जाएगी, ये कंप्यूटर ही चलाएंगे गाड़ियाँ. मैंने कहा भाई चिंता मत करो, अगले 10 साल भारत की सड़कों में AI क्या, VI क्या, कुछ नहीं चला सकता, आप ही चलाओगे. But that was in jest. Point is that AI is here, AI is real, and AI is going to transform how we live, according to my humble opinion. I do think, wo piche, I forget the name, I'd done a LinkedIn post on this. There's a French lady who made this joke about, I don't want AI to do my creative writing. I want AI to wash my clothes. I want AI to do my laundry. I want AI to clean my house. And that's exactly where AI is going. If you would have seen the recent announcement by NVIDIA, which was and is one of the most successful pure play AI companies in the world, they have just announced a big play in robotics. So where AI is headed is you're going to have a lot of robots around you doing menial tasks. And so that is embedded automation. And that is something that they can do with a lot of efficiency. Because when AI started 20, 30, 40 years back, or even before that, slowly but steadily it evolved to doing very specific tasks very well, like beating the grandmaster of chess at chess, right? But now we're talking about AGI. So, artificial general intelligence, and when can it mirror the human beings? And I don't know when it can or cannot, but I can certainly tell you that we are going to have a proliferation of AI as family managed businesses, as high growth businesses. Building the right AI embedded hardware would be a tremendous game changer. And building it for Indian languages, for Indian environment, indigenizing it to how we deal with things would be even better and would probably be much required. Correct? हमारे यहाँ तो वो थप्पड़ भी मारेगा अगर रोटी ठीक से नहीं बनेगी. You know, I had this friend who invited me in Toronto to his house. He's a South Indian, so he loves making dosas. And he's a techie. He's started several tech companies and sold them. So he told me, Puneet, in 5 years, my robot will be making dosas for you. And I have no doubt that that's going to be true. And I think that is the number one value of AI, is will hopefully take away some of our menial tasks. Now, the second part is, which Dr. Rao was talking about. A friend of mine had invested in this company called Unifor. And they were started probably before AI was a buzzword, at least 10, 12, 13, 14, somewhere years back. They did a very simple thing. हम सब कस्टमर सर्विस में कॉल करते हैं और हम परेशान हैं कस्टमर सर्विस से. पहले तो 2-3 मिनट वी हैव टू बी ऑन होल्ड. फिर उसके बाद हम उसे कहते हैं अभी ये यू नो आई टेल यू माई ओन स्टोरी. आई पेड कैश ऑन डिलीवरी. मेरा वो 560 रुपये का कुछ आया सामान, तो मैंने उसको 1000 रुपये दे दिया. मैंने कहा भाई चेंज नहीं है, बाकी डाल देना अकाउंट में. वो अकाउंट में ही नहीं आए. सो आई called customer service ki bhai nahi aaye. Eventually I had to give up on that money, by the way, even at Amazon. But point is, the customer service agent eventually got on the phone with me and she tells me कि भाई मेरे को ये नहीं समझ आ रहा कि आपने वो एक्स्ट्रा पैसे दिए क्यों हैं. मतलब how much more do you want me to get into this with you? So point is, it's very frustrating because trained nahi hote, language problems, etc., etc. Now, these problems get compounded, especially when we are dealing with money, right? And so this company, Unifor, said to banks that what we will do is we will have somebody listening, a computer listening to these calls, because AI wasn't such a cool word then. They said we will have a technology listening to your calls. And what that will do is, it will start to tell you कि सबसे बड़ा प्रॉब्लम एरिया कौन सा है, तो आप उसे वैसे ही सॉल्व कर लो ना, तो आपकी कस्टमर सर्विस कॉल्स की वॉल्यूम कम हो जाएगी. देन सेकेंड दे सेड वी विल लिसन टू ऑल दीज कॉल्स एंड टेल यू हु आर द बॉटम 10% परफॉर्मर्स जो जवाब दे ही नहीं रहे, या दे रहे हैं तो ये सवाल जो पूछ रहे हैं वो ऐसे पूछ रहे हैं कि भाई आपने एक्स्ट्रा पैसे दिए क्यों. सो all of these sorts of things they did. They are, of course, a 100 million plus company. They've relocated to the US. They're based out of Palo Alto. The former Cisco, John Chambers, is on the board, and they've been immensely successful. But they did this 15 years back. And today, you can do this very, very easily. So the difference is 15 years back, the technology required to do this was quite cumbersome. Today, the technology required to do this is quite easy. And so all of us are slowly, all of us meaning technology geeks and the startup entrepreneurs, are building AI for different types of problem statements across the value chain in different industries, from solving customer service queries to improving sales efficiency. Now I have this friend whose name I don't want to disclose, but he's a professor. He's a very prominent professor. So he told me, he called me one day, he says, मैं AI agent बना रहा हूँ. मैंने कहा, भाई, what will your AI agent do? He says, see, I want to write a lot about these 4 topics. So what my AI agent is going to do is it's going to scour the web for what is the latest in these 4 topics. And then I'm going to feed it into ChatGPT and it will summarize it. And then it will automatically post it on my YouTube, what is that called? YouTube channel or something, right? Podcast. And it will automatically publish a blog, and it will be written, generated by AI, and then I will correct it. And then I'm hoping in 3 to 6 months the correction rates will come down, and eventually I'll have a great revenue stream out of this. So my point is that somebody who has no knowledge of technology, he's not a coder, he does not understand technology like a computer engineer would, he is very comfortable figuring out how to build this agent all by himself, because there are platforms out there that will let you build an agent end to end for $20 a month, right? And so in the last 30, 40 years, what is happening is the cost of building technology is coming down, and it's coming down very, very rapidly. And therefore, a lot of these aspects are going to permeate our life, mostly through the AI channel. And a lot of the things that we've never thought are going to change dramatically, in my humble opinion. Now, one of my favorite gentlemen, Professor Mohanbir Sani, who taught me product management at Northwestern, we recently invited him, not recently, I think it was like early last year, for a talk on AI. So he came and he said कि ये मैगी का ad है ना, वो मैं आपको रियल टाइम बना के दिखाऊंगा 30 seconds में प्लेबुक के साथ AI यूज़ करके. And then he also talked about his own experience where he was going to give somebody very senior in a Middle Eastern country, and they sent him a document 500 pages. So on the flight he fed into ChatGPT and said, create a 2-page summary. He said, I presented that 2-page summary and the guy's telling me, you're a rock star. How do you do this? Take 500 pages and make it just the same. So I think all of this is going to help us in becoming better communicators, in becoming better at what we do. So it's not a tool to run away from, it's a tool to use to increase our productivity in our day-to-day lives. And so AI is also going to change, I think, what we do for the better. The last part, and I think I'm sort of at the end of my time, what Dr. Rao mentioned, and this is my own experience with ChatGPT. Somebody who needs to utilize ChatGPT can't utilize it unless they know the subject a little bit. Because अगर सवाल ही ढंग का नहीं पूछोगे तो जवाब अच्छा कैसे आएगा? So therefore, it does not replace the need for domain knowledge. It does not replace the need for expertise. All it's doing is giving you access to that expertise in a far more quicker manner. In fact, there was a beautiful blog I read, and for those of you who are interested, you can connect with me, I can send it to you. It talked about how for coding, AI is only getting you 80% of the way. And the rest 20% is so treacherous because it's just so highly inefficient even for the AI today that we don't know how long it will take to traverse that path. So the people who are able to utilize that 80% are existing programmers. They are really able to do much better job with it. So what I'm trying to say is that the sphere that expertise will become irrelevant is not true. AI is only as good as the question you ask. So on that note, I think I'd bring this to an end. Thank you so much again. Thank you.
Wonderful. Dr. Gupta, thank you so much for that brilliant address. I think you've stayed true to your mark of three things in your topic as well. You're building both strategic roadmap and high growth business, and then 3 points at each. But I don't know, we have time for about a couple of questions. If anybody else, otherwise I have one question. I'll maybe start with that and then somebody should chip in. Professor, you said, entrepreneurs have this whole idea of not being a good teamsman, right? We feel that we're good at solo sports. We want to do everything ourselves, build our teams, manage finance. Is this perhaps the reason why we don't feel too comfortable with boards or advisors of that group of people who should be asking the right questions? Because our own DNA or part of our own success is because we ourselves outdid our own potential, and therefore we are at a certain state. Now we need to kind of go back in our own.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think you've hit the nail on the head, right? When I start a company or I start as an entrepreneur, I actually don't have any help. There is nobody I can reach out to, right? And so I've got to learn doing everything myself, right? I mean, I know when I became an entrepreneur, even booking an air ticket was cumbersome because पहले तो office में कोई कर देता था. Now I had to go and do it myself. So these are not the days of make my trip.
Correct.
where it was so easy to do book a ticket, right? So therefore, when you are, what you know makes you successful is your ability to pick it up and get it done. And that is what has served you best. You did not trust anybody with the tasks that were important because you realized you didn't have enough help, you didn't have the right support staff, whatever. Now to all of a sudden forego that as you grow becomes hard. But I think that greatest entrepreneurs, best entrepreneurs, learn how to do that. They learn how to unlearn. They learn how to retool, reskill. There's another joke a very good friend of mine from McKinsey used to make. He says McKinsey में एनालिस्ट को बहुत अच्छी एक्सेल आनी चाहिए, उसके बाद एसोसिएट को एक्सेल के साथ पावर पॉइंट और ये सब आना चाहिए, उसके बाद मैनेजर को इन सब से काम कराना आना चाहिए और पार्टनर का इन सब से कोई लेना देना नहीं है, उसे सेल्स आनी चाहिए. Now, can you imagine one person traversing from the bottom all the way to the top with completely different skill sets? So, at every step, you may have been a great analyst, but that doesn't mean you can be a great salesperson. And so, at every step, you have to unlearn and maybe relearn the new thing. And that is very relevant for today's generation, honestly. In our times, we could stick with one thing for 15, 20 years, but I don't think that's possible anymore. You're going to have to anyway continue to unlearn and learn.
No, brilliant. I think so. Learning, unlearning, I think, anyways, is a way of life, and then entrepreneurship. Professor, you wanted to add something?
I think the point that you made of 0 to 1 and 1 to 10 and 10 to, that's truly the way things work. Unfortunately, what works for the first phase of a company doesn't work for the rest of it. And many entrepreneurs of today recognize that. And they're willing to take a step back and yield it to a CEO who can take it to the next level.
Okay.
That's the spirit of an entrepreneur, because that person who is taking it from 100 to 1,000 will not be able to do the job of the 0 to 1 guy. It's just a different skill set. Yeah.
Okay. And one last question, maybe Dr. Gupta, is where do you see boards or informal advisors or friends or whatever you want to call as your sounding board? Not necessarily asking you questions, not necessarily charting your pathways for growth trajectories, just being your sounding board. You talk to them, possibly they ask a couple of questions, and in the process as an entrepreneur, you get a little more clarity on what you want to do.
100%. I mean, I think, look, good entrepreneurs build a personal board of advisors.
Okay.
And see, because of compliance and a variety of other reasons and the high liability that a proper board of directors role carries, most people don't like to come on the board of directors of an early stage company anyway. So it's pretty much an advisory board. But what I can tell you out of my personal experience is, for example, when I started the lending company that I talked about, I went to a gentleman who ran NABARD, who had done rural lending. I went to a gentleman who had worked with RBI and knew how an NBFC operates, how to get the NBFC license, what are the stipulations and compliances around non-banking finance companies. And those were things that they were willing to teach me.
Correct.
In addition to that, they were willing to also help support me in, endeavors that resulted from my lack of ability to do it directly. So I think for good entrepreneurs, one thing I found is they figure out a way to build a personal board of directors more than the company board of directors or a personal board of advisors. And that comes from a sense of what do I need?
True.
What's important for me relative to my business, relative to my problem set, relative to my target market, my target audience, my delivery, etc., etc. And then, once you are able to answer or ask those questions, you can easily get access to people. And I can tell you out of my personal experience, most people are willing to help.
True.
They want to be able to see you succeed. So I don't think there is any dearth of folks out there who'd be more than happy to advise you, to help you, and most of them are not really asking the question, what's in it for me?
I was about to say, most of them are willing to help for negligible or no cost. Right.
That's right.
Because
But I think it's important for you as an entrepreneur, and just to build on that, I think you've got to find people who don't ask you the question, what's in it for me? But you
But
as
you
an
honor
entrepreneur need to answer the question, what's in it for them?
correct.
And I think that's when a relationship is truly both ways.
True.
Because otherwise it becomes difficult for your
Sustain it
own this thing to have a sustained mentorship or tutelage, because it's like you
Perhaps
have
it
to give
doesn't
back.
form the part of the DNA matching, but the moral matching, if we may say, where
100%, yeah.
where as an entrepreneur you feel you're taking something, there has to be something in for the other
That's exactly
gentleman
right.
or the lady. Wonderful, sir. I see a hand up there. Yeah,
Hi. Yeah, I had a question.
please.
Wonderful speech, and it was quite enlightening. We started to Mr. Gupta. We started with your analysis of your speech in SPGen, where you came out with the fact that what people really fear they're lacking is finding the right person. And we are going towards artificial intelligence, like you said, that's going to be the next way to look. So, is it really a right? I mean, because we are still in the transition, we haven't reached, using AI as we will probably, use it at some point in time. So, this transition, should I want to believe that we are going to be dealing with the mediocre kind of people that who don't want to work, like Mr. Rao said, today's generation doesn't want to work and want to make simple, probably do simpler things. And for a company like ours, which is a small scale company, I mean, the top tier students who probably pass out and maybe are brighter would want to go for bigger companies. So, is it that, should we kind of accept the fact that we'll have to do with some kind of a mediocre set of people that will work for us?
Thank you for the question. It's a great question. See, what I have found is, with all due respect to the folks across the street, their folks are not relevant for majority of the businesses in this country. I can tell you out of my own experience that somebody who goes to a tier 1 institute has the ambition and drive that sometimes a small business just cannot manage. And therefore, it's not a question of mediocrity. So, somebody who's going to a less reputed school at times may be more brilliant than the gentleman or the lady that went to the top-notch school. So I think you've got to decouple intelligence and the school that you went to. And I'm a poster child of that. I went to a great business school, but I can tell you I have nothing special in me. I'm a pretty average guy, and I mean that. And I started to question myself when I sat in the auditorium on the first day of business school, when they were announcing this guy is like a PhD at 21, and this guy did this, and I was thinking, oh, what the hell did I do to deserve this market? So, I mean, average people like me make it to great institutions, but doesn't necessarily mean that we are intelligent. What you need as a small business is somebody who is hungry and driven around your business and is willing to participate in your mission, vision. And chances are that person is not going to come from a tier 1 institution if you're a small business. So I think that is something that we've experienced again and again and again, and that's why it's not a generalized statement, but it's true in majority of the cases, because it's hard to satisfy that hunger and appetite. But that's one. Two is, I think your point about supplanting resources with AI. So I think the boards are not really folks who actually do tasks for you directly. They are ones who enrich you intellectually at the early stage founder level. So you will need that personal board of advisors still for that intellectual enrichment. But yes, a lot of the tasks I feel the medium-sized businesses will be able to transfer or transform towards AI. So for example, sales. It's really hard to get good salespeople. And door to door. You could do a lot of the front ending of the sales process through agentic AI today, and it'll only improve in time in terms of finding the right leads, reaching the right people, etc., etc. I can tell you, I just looked at a deal in debt recovery that is doing agentic AI for 40 to 50% of what a debt recovery agent used to do. Much more effectively at 1/10 the cost and in compliance. because the risk of an agent going rogue is much higher, if you will. With AI, you can control some of those elements also. So I do think that agentic AI will be very productive for mid-market businesses. Does that sort of answer? Is there something I missed?
Also, we recently had a seminar where I had a talk on employee engagement and retention, and we ended up saying one thing, that loyalty is gone, laziness is in. So don't expect too much from your employees. But as an employer, I think one of our art or one of our skills lies in getting the best out of the team that we have. I mean, you go to any entrepreneur across the street and say, do you have the best men that you want? And the answer is no. Our skill and our ability lies in getting the best from what we have, and I think therefore I don't know an employee who says I'm motivated to go to my office. Believe me, I mean, we never had one on this planet. But it's just whether can we give him the right atmosphere, the right ecosystem, the values aligning. As he said that if you are driven, is the employee equally driven? I mean, there's a chance that your employee who is a mediocre could be extremely productive in some another setup. So it's the alignment of the right kind of mindset that you want is
I
critical.
think just
Yeah.
to build on that, I'd like to share an example. When I moved back to India, we needed a driver because it was difficult for me to drive in Delhi. I'm sure all of you know. So we had one driver whose driving skills were excellent, but he was so rude. So we had to let him go. Then we got another one. This gentleman was not the best driver, but his bedside manner was phenomenal, right? And then my wife said, no, isko chalani nahi aati, gaadi maar dega. We had to get to a third guy. After we went through a series of these folks, what I realized is I need to know what I want to value, because I'm not going to get the perfect guy. And, in that process, I had a person, just to give you an example, who I told that my daughter needs this book at about 3 p.m. That book was not available in any bookstore. This guy went on Google, found out all the publishers, called them on his own accord, and, didn't even bother telling me. And he told them, kahan pe milegi ye kitab? And then he called me and said, ye itne ki mil rahi hai, le aun kya? That is an entrepreneur. That guy is not a driver. He's an entrepreneur, an entrepreneurial driver. So I mean, unfortunately, we couldn't retain him because of a variety of other reasons. But that would be the type of guy, would be a great fit for a small medium business, right? So I think finding that DNA match, finding what you're looking for, he may not be able to do 15 other things, but may be able to do what you are looking for, that drive, that in addition to the DNA match. I just thought, building on this in terms of matching it to what you want the person to do and being able to prioritize, because वो perfect milna thoda sa complicated hai.
As you said, it's more of relationships, and you don't get a perfect wife, nor do you get a perfect husband, nor do you get a perfect employee. So thank you so much. I think, ladies and gentlemen, we've just surpassed by 5 minutes, but that's pardonable at AMA, given that we started about 10 minutes late than we were scheduled to. So that brings us to the end. But thank you so much, professors. I think it's always a pleasure for us at AMA. On behalf of all of us, I remark that at AMA we get lucky every hour. We have so many visitors on the campus that we kind of feel that there's so much that Dr. Vikram Sarabhai must have envisaged for this great institute, that we have been enriched for so many years, minute after minute, hour after hour, courtesy people that we see like you coming on the campus. But looking forward to have you, sir's future in sometime again. Whenever you're here, you're always invited. Professor Malik, thank you so much for facilitating the visit. We look forward to having you all again and again at AMA. Thank you so much once again, and have a wonderful evening ahead. Thank you.